Ghostface goes on this, skit on the album where he basically, without naming names, he pretty much did.
And he's like, yo, with them Wu niggas. You knew they said that.
Deep as I don't know if, a lot of people, but Wu-Tang Clan was to be deep as I'm talking about, deep as 100 people. That's a lot of people.
Biggie and the Wu-Tang Clan didn't just part ways. They had one of the most dangerous fallouts in hip-hop history, especially with Ghostface Killah and Raekwon. Things got so heated, people say it almost turned deadly.
And when he said it, it was like, we knew that later on it could be an issue about it, but we didn't care. We were 25, we was fresh.
But before that explosion, there was a rare moment of unity, one that could have been erased before it ever happened. Let's break it down. Every true hip-hop head knows that the collab between Biggie and Method Man on Ready to Die, straight fire. A classic that still slaps to this day.
That Meth got on the record with Big, and that you did not want that to happen.
But here's the wild part. This legendary track almost never made it to the booth. And the reason? RZA. Now, if you know Wu-Tang, you know RZA wasn't just cooking beats. He was the architect of the whole movement. He controlled everything. The sound, the look, the message. Wu-Tang had built this raw underground brand that didn't bow to anyone. So when someone floated the idea of Method Man teaming up with Biggie, RZA was not with it. He didn't want any outsiders mixing into Wu-Tang's flavor, especially if it meant giving up control. He felt like Meth stepping out would water down the wave they were building. And this was during a time when Wu-Tang was just starting to run the game. RZA wasn't about to let anyone, not even Biggie Smalls, ride their momentum.
Okay, no, I didn't want Wu rhyming on nobody beats.
No, it wasn't beats.
It was just like, it was our time, and it was just like, I didn't want nobody else sharing in that moment.
But then came Tracy Waples, a sharp-eyed A&R who knew where the streets were headed. She wasn't just watching the culture, she was moving it. She saw the power in uniting Biggie and Meth on one track and knew it would shake the whole rap game. So she pressed RZA hard, brought the vision, brought the energy, and it changed everything. RZA might have been skeptical, but he respected Tracy Waples, and that respect changed everything. Even though he had his doubts, he trusted her gut and finally gave Method Man the green light. And man, that move paid off. The Biggie and Meth collab became an instant classic, a raw blend of Brooklyn grit and Staten Island swagger. Even decades later, that track still hits like it just dropped. But just when it felt like peace was in the air between Biggie's crew and Wu-Tang.
But Tracy Waples, first of all,
Tracy Waples, big up.
Dope A&Rs,
Yep.
just another unsung hero of hip hop, probably.
Right.
She pitched that idea.
Boom, tensions came roaring back. On Wu-Tang's very next project, Ghostface Killah and Raekwon popped off with some slick, low-key shots at Biggie. It wasn't direct, but everybody knew who they were talking about. The unity cracked in half. To understand how it got this messy, you gotta rewind the story back to 1995, and that year wasn't just any year. It was the heartbeat of hip-hop's golden era. The streets were electric. Legends were dropping heat back to back. The sound was leveling up, and New York? That was ground zero for everything. But with all that greatness came serious pressure. Every move was watched. Every verse had meaning. Every album cover, every beat, even a single ad-lib, all of it had to be original. And back then, the worst thing you could do in hip-hop was bite. Copying another artist's style was basically cultural robbery. You didn't just catch shade, you sparked a war. No joke. So when Raekwon dropped Only Built for Cuban Links, which would go on to become a straight-up classic, the attention wasn't just on the bars or production. People were locked in on the whole package. The image, the vibe, and the not-so-subtle messages tucked inside. Hidden in Only Built for Cuban Links was a little skit, but the message? Loud and clear. Ghostface Killah went off, calling out rappers who jack other people's styles. He didn't drop names, but come on. The whole game knew exactly who he meant, the Notorious B.I.G. It wasn't even a question on the streets. That shot was aimed straight at Big. Now from Ray and Ghost's perspective, this wasn't just a random diss, it was deep.
This nigga biting off your album cover. Boom, bad enough, they biting lines like killed me. When they came with some knot, bit off a Nas.
They were tight with Nas, and in their eyes, the Illmatic cover, that was legendary. A young Nas in front of Queensbridge, repping his block, his roots, his story. So when they peeped Biggie's Ready to Die cover with a baby sitting dead center, they felt a way. To them, it looked way too familiar, like Big had seen Nas's blueprint and just flipped it for himself. But here's the twist. There was no bad blood between Biggie and Nas. Behind the scenes, they actually had mutual respect, real cool energy between them. But in 1995, that didn't matter. This was peak ego era. Image was everything. Clout, loyalty, pride, all of it was on the line. And from the outside looking in, it looked like Big crossed the line. And guess what? Biggie found out fast. Word got back and he was heated. According to Nas, Big actually hit him up personally, pressed him about it. Nas said Big was like, yo, you messing with them Wu dudes? You knew they said that ish? Nas kept it solid. He was like, yo, that's just Ghost. Ghostface gonna be Ghostface. There's no beef here. I didn't even know he was gonna say all that.
We had a certain respect for Nas. At that time, like I said, when Ghost said what he said, it wasn't nothing premeditated. We all competitive, whether we like you or not. It's just competition. If it goes somewhere, then that's something else. But it was always about the sport.
He tried to explain. This wasn't about taking sides, but Big. He took it to heart. And that tension, it never really left after that. Biggie wasn't out here trying to copy nobody. He felt straight up misunderstood. If you actually listened to Ready to Die, you'd hear it had its own voice, its own pain, its own lane. But back then, it didn't matter what his real intent was. It was all about how people perceived it, and the perception was messy.
He called me and he's like, yo, been with them Wu niggas. You knew they said I mean, that's Ghost.
Right.
Ghostface is Ghostface. There's no love lost. I didn't know he was gonna say this.
Now Biggie could have gone nuclear. He could have dropped a diss track and aired everything. And word is, he did. He hit the studio, fired off bars aimed directly at Ghost and Ray, and let all that frustration bleed into the mic. He was ready to go to war, but here's where Big proved he wasn't just lyrical. He was strategic.
Wasn't trying to bite off my no, just in general, because he wasn't coming at it like that. Because if you listen to his album, he tell a whole.
After recording it, he sat back, played it, and thought hard. Then he told his manager at the time, Jacob York, to scrap the whole thing, delete it. Nobody was ever going to hear it. Jacob later told the full story on the Boss Up, Don't Be Scared podcast. He said, Biggie never dropped a diss track on them. He spit it, got it off his chest, then told me to erase it. Just like that. And honestly, that decision might have saved the whole New York rap scene from exploding. Back then, one diss track from Biggie could have set off a wildfire. Labels, crews, boroughs, everybody jumping in. But don't get it twisted, Biggie didn't just go silent. He was slick with it. Instead of name dropping, he laced his response in cold subliminals. On Kick in the Door, he spit, "This goes out for those that choose to use disrespectful views on the King of New York." No names needed. The message hit like a warning shot. He heard the sneak disses, and he wasn't going to let anyone snatch that crown without clapping back. Then came that night, the one where everything could have spiraled into chaos. A night that had all the ingredients for a full-blown disaster. One that might have gone down as one of the darkest moments in hip-hop history. The energy in the room, unreal. You could feel it in the air, thick with tension. One wrong look, one reckless word, and boom, it could have popped off like a war zone. It all went down at a packed nightclub on Manhattan's West Side. And if this was a movie, this would have been the climax. Big name rappers in every corner. Crews filled with real ones, street certified, liquor everywhere, egos in overdrive, everything lined up for something explosive. Enter Peter Pistol. Pete wasn't just some dude posted up at the bar. He had real clout in the streets. His name rang bells. And that night he was rolling with D-Rock, Biggie's right hand, no fluff, all loyalty. These two weren't linked by industry politics. They were brothers from the trenches. Real bond, real history, real trust. So when D-Rock walked up to Pete that night, moving tight, eyes locked, not smiling, Pete didn't need a backstory, didn't need a full breakdown, just one look and he knew it was serious. D-Rock leaned in, eyes cold, and said, "Yo, Wu-Tang's pressing big, we might have a problem." But Pete didn't flinch. No yelling, no wild hand movements, none of that. He moved like a true OG, calm, locked in, ready for whatever. He gave a subtle signal to his crew, and that was all it took. In seconds, the vibe shifted. His people got the message. They weren't there to start a war, but they weren't letting anyone lay a finger on Biggie either.
To me, he was like, "Yo, what's up, Pistol? What up? Yo, what up, D?" He said, "Yo," so he was, like, "Yo, these guys trying to front on Biggie and shit like that, man. Like I might need you to, help us out."
See, what folks gotta understand is Wu-Tang wasn't rolling with just artists. Nah, they had warriors behind them. Wu-Tang didn't roll light. Their squad was deep, real street soldiers, not industry extras. These were men who lived by a different code, and if anything popped off that night, it wasn't gonna be some little fight. It would have turned into a war zone. That club would have gone from a party to pure chaos in seconds. So now picture this. One side of the room, Biggie and his crew, standing their ground, unshaken. Across the way, Wu-Tang and their people, just as solid, just as locked in, nobody flinching, nobody blinking. For what felt like forever, the whole place stood still. You could feel the pressure, like the air itself was holding its breath, just waiting for that first spark to light the whole thing up. But then, the twist nobody saw coming. Pete looked across the room and locked eyes with Raekwon, two respected men, two bosses, and instead of letting the heat take over, Pete made a real power move. He stepped forward. No flexing, no yelling, just grown man energy. And Ray, he respected it. He wasn't trying to tear the place apart either. Both of them knew if they let their squads loose, it wouldn't be no coming back from that. So they did what legends do. They chose peace. Just like that, the tension broke. No punches, no drama, just two street-bred men showing what real power looks like. That moment right there, it saved hip-hop from what could have been one of its ugliest chapters. Years later, Pete's still kept it real about that night. He never turned it into some Biggie's crew punked Wu story. No cap. He gives full props to Raekwon, Ghostface, Method Man, all of them, because at the end of the day, they were all cut from the same cloth, street dudes who made it into music, still carrying the codes of the block while trying to survive in the spotlight. They knew exactly what their presence meant. These weren't just rappers in a club, they were giants in the room. One wrong step could shift the whole scene, but that night, they made the call to step back from the edge, instead of falling over it. And years later, after all the tension, the sneak disses, and the silent standoffs between Wu-Tang and Biggie's circle, something real happened, something nobody expected. It went down at L.A. Live. Ghostface Killah pulled up with the rest of the Wu crew, Raekwon, U-God, and a few others. They were running late, just making their way in when Ghost spotted someone posted by the bar. Biggie, standing there, calm, chill, just vibing like it was any other night. And that's when Ghost made a choice, one he'd been quietly sitting with for a long time.
Deep as I don't know if, a lot of people, but Wu-Tang Clan was to be deep as I'm talking about, deep as 100 people. That's a lot of.
I just slid to him, Ghost said. I had thought about doing it before. I just wanted to clear the air, maybe make some music, you know what I mean. So he walked over, no security talk, no drama, and gave Big a pound. That was it. No loud moment, no staged reunion, just real ones showing mutual respect, grown man energy. Ghost even laughed later, saying Big was taller than he thought. The whole vibe felt awkward, but real. They had never even spoken before that. And in that one quiet second, all the static disappeared. He just stood above me. We both said peace to each other, and it got quiet. That peaceful second would end up being the first and last time Ghostface Killah ever saw Biggie in the flesh. A moment that closed a chapter without words. Just days after that brief moment of peace, Biggie was gone, murdered in Los Angeles. And for Ghostface, it hit different. That ish broke my heart. It really broke my heart, Ghost said. He didn't hold back. He even admitted Big's death hurt more than Tupac's. Maybe it was cause he was from New York. Maybe it was something else, but his passing, that hit me deep. Ghost wasn't just mourning the artist, he was grieving what Biggie meant to the culture. Big represented a rare moment in hip-hop, a time when artists pushed each other to be sharper, better. Back then, when Nas dropped something, it lit a fire under you, Ghost explained. When Big dropped heat, I knew I had to step my bars up. That energy, it was iron sharpening iron. Real creative warfare that elevated the whole game. These days, Ghost said he doesn't feel that same spark. I F with it just cause, but I'm not inspired by today's music. It's not hate, it's just a reflection. Back then, music had weight, it had purpose. And when he looks back on Biggie's legacy, he's still amazed. Only 2 albums, and he's one of the greatest to ever do it? That's crazy. Ghost knew if Big had lived longer, that would have been dangerous. But let's not forget, Wu-Tang wasn't just about lyrical excellence. These were real ones. They weren't just spitting bars, they were surviving life. So it shouldn't shock anyone that Biggie wasn't the only heavyweight they had friction with. Because truth is, things got so real. At one point, Wu-Tang nearly found themselves beefing with actual mafias. Mid-90s, Wu-Tang was everywhere. Their rise wasn't loud. It was like smoke rolling out of Shaolin. Steady, silent, and undeniable. They were dominating rap, reshaping the sound, and creating something way deeper than just music. Raekwon, one of the sharpest pens in the crew, was gearing up for his first solo drop, and from day one, he had a vision. His original title, Wu Gambinos, and it fit. Wu-Tang's whole energy at the time was soaked in that cinematic underworld aesthetic, like they'd stepped straight out of Scarface, Goodfellas, Casino, or Once Upon a Time in America.
Yes, when you were coming together doing the Cuban Links project, originally, the project was supposed to be called Wu Gambinos.
Ray wanted to stamp that mafioso vibe into hip-hop history. Naming the project Wu Gambinos felt like the final boss move. It wasn't just branding, it was declaration. But here's where things got real. While Wu-Tang was building their mafia-inspired masterpiece in the booth, the real Gambino family, the infamous New York crime syndicate, one of the city's most feared 5 families, was still alive and active, and very much in business. And the Gambinos, they didn't play games. We're talking murder, extortion, rackets, drugs, the full menu. These weren't movie villains. This was real-life organized chaos. And using their name on a rap album cover, that wasn't bold.
He knows no crime family in America has been as powerful, as wealthy, or as tricky.
That was dangerous. Enter Steve Rifkin, the head honcho at Loud Records, Wu-Tang's label. He gets a call, not a press release, not a lawyer, a call. See, Steve's father, Jules Rifkin, was an old school music exec with ties on both sides, the suits and the streets, and he passed the word down straight. Tell them don't do it. That wasn't a request, that was a warning. This wasn't about lawsuits or headlines. This was a real-life warning. You don't throw a mafia family's name on your album cover in New York City and think nobody's gonna press you. The Gambinos weren't gonna let some rap crew flip their name for clout and walk away clean. Period. Raekwon, at first he wasn't trying to hear it. He's admitted in interviews he was down to take that risk. That Wu-Tang mentality ran deep. We do what we want.
Raekwon wanted to call the album, instead of Only Built for Cuban Links, he wanted to call it
Wu Gambinos.
But then a phone call came in from the actual Gambinos. Tell me about.
My father called me. Somebody called him and said that they heard that, and they didn't want the name.
But sometimes being smart means knowing when to back off. And this was that moment. After some serious thinking and probably a few tense behind-the-scenes conversations, they made the call. It wasn't worth it. That's when the album title changed to what we now know as Only Built for Cuban Links, a certified classic that still holds weight in the game today. The vibe, still mafioso to the core, but now without putting a target on their backs.
How you just gonna use that name like that and run with it, you know what I mean? So, you know, it was something funny to me because I'm like, I'm doing it anyway.
And let's be clear, they didn't abandon the vision. The Wu Gambinos track still made the cut, and on that song, they fully embraced their aliases, Raekwon as Lex Diamonds, Ghostface Killah as Tony Starks, RZA as Bobby Steels, each name stamped with that underworld flair, but flipped just enough to avoid heat from the real ones watching from the shadows. Raekwon later reflected on that decision, keeping it all the way raw. Back then, our mentality was take the risk, F it, but we had to second guess that and be like, you know what, don't do it. Steve Rifkin didn't sugarcoat it either. The Mafia told Raekwon not to title his album Wu Gambinos. That's a fact. Sounds like rap mythology, right? Like some wild hood folklore, but it really happened.
So back then, our mentality was, we'll take the risk. But, you know, like I said, being young and kind of like a little immature.
Wu-Tang, the crew that always played with the edge, got a firm reminder from the actual underworld. Certain names are not to be touched, and they listened. If you were locked in all the way through this story, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Who else should we break down next? Let us know in the comments below.